Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Built in Ohio, the Ohio X podcast, where we're talking with and about the people, companies, and ideas that are building Ohio's innovation ecosystem. So today we got a great conversation and a longtime Ohio X partner and friend. So we have Quentin Fisher, who is the CEO and founder of Aidan Systems. They help manufacturing and healthcare organizations operate in the AI era by giving them a new operating system designed for speed, coordination, and real-world operations. Their core platform is the AI Control Tower, which turns enterprise data into trusted insight and action without ripping out existing systems. And so coming to us from, I believe, Northeastern Ohio and the worldwide headquarters of Aidan. Quentin, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Yeah, Chardon, Ohio. And we have some offices in Beechwood as well. So super excited to be here and represent Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, I love it, and you're joining a great list of a lot of Northeastern Ohio folks that have been on the podcast. And if I had to actually break it down, I would say we've had probably more Northeastern Ohio people on, which is a testament to really all that's going on up there. And I'm looking forward to digging into the work you're doing. But maybe to start, Quentin, if you could just kind of give us an overview of who you are. Obviously, we just learned a bit of where you're from, but what you're doing. And Aidan is a bit of a newer company, in the grand scheme where you have built it, launched it. Now you're running this organization, but what's the Quentin story?
Yeah. Well, Quentin's actually Canadian. I'm one of these stealth immigrants. So, and now American, right? I was only going to come down here for, a couple of years and then take all these learnings back. And then I guess I met this girl and that's how the story went, right? So I've been in Ohio since and really happy, family here, all that good stuff, right? So I was a kind of globetrotter consultant, doing 100,000 miles a year, running some global analytics kind of organizations for manufacturing and public sector for some big consulting organizations. And did that, and then kind of decided, hey, let me give it a shot. And that's when I started kind of various versions of Aidan, Artificial Intelligence Discovery and Action Network for all you tech geeks out there, right? So, so started that, and then really we've been kind of focused on, this is back in 2017 when we started the original versions of it. We're going to democratize AI to manufacturing, and to be quite frank, as a organization, we heard crickets, right, in the mid-market manufacturing, and we were way early. So we actually pivoted a bit and spent a lot of time helping out health centers and a lot of mid-market health centers, helping them just improve operations. And as we all know, health care operational efficiency, they don't really mesh, right? So we really work to help a lot of that out. And then since the ChatGPT moment, and I think the convergence of a lot of the Internet of Things plumbing taking place, now there's a real need on the kind of mid-market manufacturing sector where we're really helping out. So we learned a lot, built a pretty solid solution. We had to be very secure because of the HIPAA requirements. And now we have a footprint in both kind of verticals, and really focused on helping improve the operational footprint and also revenue as well for these folks.
Yeah. Well, and being a Northeastern Ohio headquartered company, manufacturing healthcare, and obviously those things scale to well outside of Northeastern Ohio. But as we think about where there's such deep expertise, deep excellence, just a large amount of institutions, organizations, companies in those two spaces. So, it makes sense. And I love that you're melding, this AI thing that we're all trying to figure out and is rapidly changing, week by week, it seems like, with pillars of what, has built Northeastern Ohio, and the Midwest. But as we think about, AI, that is a topic very easy to just dive into one aspect of it. But maybe if you could kind of give us your 30,000 view on AI as you're thinking about it, and then we can kind of drill into some of the work you're doing, what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really like AI. It's going to be like electricity, It's going to be everywhere, and it's really, what is AI, right? So this is where we kind of try and take it up a level and have a metaphor of, like in Ohio here, we were first to flight, kind of going from the ground to the air. It's almost, that's what we're doing with AI, right? Everybody's playing the ground game now, and then we're moving to flight, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities. The controls that you need, the systems that you need, the vehicles you need, they're all different when you're running at that altitude, right? So so what we try and do is kind of where this whole control tower thing comes in, right? We try to build a very simple, repeatable process and structure that we can offer as a service to our customers, or if they want it in their cloud, we just kind of deploy it into their cloud and run it in there. But it's really kind of a turnkey solution. The idea is that it helps folks navigate all the things that you need, and we can maybe get into some of that stuff to have an effective solution, and how to really drive real value and importance. There's no room for science projects with the mid-market, right? They need to see results.
Yeah. In healthcare, it's like you're building things, you're taking care of people, and they're sick. Like this isn't a fun experiment to see what breaks.
Yeah. You got to be super solid, super secure. Yeah. So with that, I mean, there's a couple of layers. We can kind of get into that a bit, right? Sure. So our kind of our flagship approach kind of product really is Control Tower, and it kind of has 3 layers to it. And the first one is, people talk about it, but probably not enough, is your data layer, right? So we really help folks understand that. Data is the fuel for this, and let's talk the airlines, for this jet, right? Sure. You need good data. If you don't have good data, it doesn't matter how smart the latest version of the model is. I'm afraid to say it because it's going to be dated in 2 weeks. It doesn't matter how smart it is. If it's sitting on top of bad data, it's kind of a very tough time driving value for you, right? So that's the first thing. But you don't have to do it for everything. With these new technologies, you can be very specific, and we talk about building solutions that are use case driven, and you just need to fix it for that use case, right? And a lot of these solutions allow you to be very agile and iterative and focused on fixing the data for that piece. And then the next layer up is the models, right? And these are different than coding and what we used to do. They're probabilistic, right? That you ask the same question 10 times, you get kind of different answers. So what is the testing framework you need for that? How do you need, if it's your own model, how do you kind of refresh it as the data drifts and things like this? So AI, as I say, kind of lives in the wild. So it takes a lot more kind of care, can have a lot more value, but takes a lot more care and feeding, right? Kind of like a plant. If you take care of it and water it and feed it, it'll grow and get better. But if you don't, that thing will kind of wilt and die. It'll just drift. So you need to have my point is, you need to have systems in place to improve and maintain that. Just back to the airline, it takes more maintenance to kind of run in the air than it does in the ground, right? Bigger implications. Things go wrong. So you want those controls there, right? And then the kind of the top layer is really your processes, right? And that the new term is agents, right? And so those things are things that actually do value, right? Do action, take action, not just report things out. So then building those agentic processes is a key thing. And whether that's either at maybe the individual level, the team level, or the enterprise level, you're going to want to have different controls. And when do you put in, a lot of processes require some structure, right? So you don't want everything to be agentic, because you're never going to know what's happening. So you need to put some control points in there. You need some consistency. So we have learned a lot of those lessons and kind of really help folks figure out, how to implement these things effectively, at the right price point, so they're not over engineering it or under engineering it, and kind of get the value. So I think that's the kind of the three levels, like the data, model framework, and then your process or agent kind of layer as well, and kind of how to package that.
Well, and you're seeing that, you're building out, those three layers for manufacturing, healthcare, mid-market types. What is the state of AI for them, the mid-markets in healthcare, in manufacturing? Because again, this is something that changes so incredibly rapid, and as consumers, we're all jumping from one model to the next, to the next, to the next. As they kind of keep one-upping each other and doing a little bit different. And then you find certain people that are using ones for, creative or coding or this or that. But again, back to what we were kind of joking about at the beginning, like these aren't things that you can just jump around in and plan out your summer vacation using, like us as consumers are doing. And so what is that, the state of the AI mid-market look like right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't know where to start, right? And there's all this talk about frameworks and how to do it safely, and yes, all of that. But I think you need to learn by doing, right? And it's very important. So we actually came up with an AI fit assessment, right, to kind of help folks. It's a agentic process we built, but it's basically management consulting, right? Load up some data on your business. What are your goals, right, for your business this year, this quarter, right? What's your capability in these areas, right? And then we, with that backdrop, we'll then work to say, hey, here's some ideas, and once you identify these solutions, think of it as like a 2x2, value on one axis and ease on the X, right? And you want to find things that can get you some momentum, right? So that's where you start, right? And then kind of to go back, so that's kind of like your pre-flight check, right? So then to go back, depending on what you picked, that could be a pretty simple thing that you just want to improve, level up your individual folks, like with some chat experience. There's a lot of out-of-the-box solutions. You don't need to over-engineer that. Think of that as this little Cessna that's just doing a puddle jump, right? Doing that. You don't need to over-engineer it, right? Other things you need to get coordination with a team, and what you're using for your chat and what you have access is not going to work at a team level or department level, right? So you need a different scale. So call that your turboprop, right? So that's where you need to have a little more infrastructure and governance, right? Kind of back to the making sure we do it safe, right? And have appropriate controls there. And then you have your truly enterprise grade or company-wide things. That's your jets, right? So there you want to have a lot more robust testing framework. If you're doing anything external outside your company, you're going to want to have a lot of controls and all this. So you need to make sure that those have the kind of the right thing. So you got to find the right product for the kind of level you're going at, and you don't want to not do anything till everything's perfect. You have to go in, but do it, proactively and responsibly as well. So that's kind of a framework, and with that, like I tell folks that, just this, if you approach this correctly, it should be generating cash flow and generating value for you, right? It should be a very high ROI on these types of engagements. You're going to get at least 100% ROI on your projects, and you've seen things like 10x, right? And that's the way you need to do it. I think the other thought is, this is to your point, things change fast, right? You need to be agile. You learn by doing and kind of finding things. And I guess the other kind of thought as you're going through this is a limiting factor in a lot of the cases. To kind of stop folks, it prevents them from kind of going faster, is their data. So back to the data, right? So it kind of starts, and it makes sense, right? If you're think about your car breaks down, no big deal. Your plane breaks down is kind of a big deal, right? So
a little bit bigger.
Actually, I got some other stories on that, but yeah. So but your other systems and controls need to go in concert with, the altitude that you're growing on this, right? And if your automation's way ahead of your data, that's a problem. Like they used to say, garbage in, garbage out.
Sure.
And now it's more like garbage in, garbage amplified, because everything's scaled, right?
Yeah.
So you need, once again, at the individual chat level, not that big a deal. But you go to the team, and then you go to the company or enterprise level. You need to have maturity, scale with your automation and capabilities, and that's, I guess that's classic IT stuff that hasn't changed since we started.
Yeah, right. That even with these new technologies, some of the same human-centered challenges and realities are kind of at the heart and center of it. What because the AI, this whole thing for all of us, again on the kind of the consumer side, and since the ChatGPT launch, it's been a few years now. For these mid markets that we're talking about, how has the sentiment changed, evolved? Where's it at now from where it was 6 months ago or 12 months ago? Because we've seen these ebbs and flows of incredible excitement and people wanting to do things because they read the headlines in the Wall Street Journal and there's a fear of missing out. And then it seemed like we went through a bit of a like, hey, show us the actual work here, and we need to go beyond pilots and theoretical. And so where's it at? What's the shift been like? What do you think it's going to be like for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think well, the other thing that maybe is a governor on the pace is from data is change management, right? And people and changing the way things go through. And I think that takes some time, right? Yeah, it's tough to change, right? I think the vast majority of use cases and everything you hear about out there, it's still that individual productivity thing, right? And how do you use this to build a better PowerPoint, to summarize your notes, to do all those things, right? And honestly, like, I'm trying to change my workflow so I do less of that and automate those pieces, right? But as you kind of move up to that, team coordination and then kind of enterprise coordination, those are kind of orders of magnitude greater change management, right? And becomes more transformation projects, right? And there's much more value, but there's much more effort, right? So I think, so I think, and there's a lot of news, maybe even a year ago about all the pilot failures, right? And it's like, well, yeah, people are just trying this stuff out. They didn't have this big strategic view on what they're trying to do. They're testing and experimenting with the solution, and there was a very high failure rate, which you would expect, right? But I think this is consistent with a lot of IT projects, and I used to put in ERP projects; those used to fail all the time too, right? And this is probably better than that because it's not as big. Those big integrated systems were really hard to put in place. And if you guys remember back, the failure rate of ERP implementations was very high. And how many good EHR implementations have you seen? They always get messed up and go over, and the thing with agentic solutions, if you do it appropriately, they're smaller, they're more contained. When we do these things, we typically say, hey, if that release or whatever takes more than 3 months, it's too big, right? It's got to be a kind of a tight, kind of iterative feedback loop, learn, adapt, adjust, all those things. We're deploying these things in production, and it's kind of like, go back to this airline analogy or metaphor, and we're on takeoff, right? And we got the solution that works pretty good, but now we're kind of working through how do we get the adoption of the users. And I was just on a call this morning. We put a solution in place for in a manufacturing center, kind of really old machine. These old guys are retiring. So then and so we kind of loaded all the documents, all the videos, interviewed him, load all this stuff up, and we put it into this kind of really intelligent chat bot, and it's kind of there, and it works pretty good, we think, but how do you then get the guys to use it, right? How do you kind of change on the floor, getting
people
people
side?
Yeah, it's people side of things, right? So, and once you start doing that, so we got little incentives. We're doing a gift card, and you're trying to make it fun and exciting. So some of those things are, that's the reality of change, and that's kind of where we're at. So it's going to cause a lot of change, and I think you're going to see, to be quite frank, we took AI out of our name because we're worried a bit about the kind of the PR. It's a little Easter egg, inside our name. But I think the broader sentiment, my wife will tell you, there's not a lot of good about AI, but so I think that's the reality of it. You have this mixed bag of perspectives, and it's going to drive a ton of transformation, right? And we need to be ready for it. And I think what you guys are doing at Ohio X and trying to level people up is a lot. I kind of heard how I went to school for an engineering degree and said, yeah, this is going to last you 30 years, right? Nowadays you go to school and they're like, that's the education that lasts over 10 years. You know what I mean? It's so the pace of change is happening, and I think that's going to be a stressor on a lot of folks. So how do we help them?
It really is. And to your point on the people side and the change management within organizations, again, you're doing it in healthcare, manufacturing. Those are two areas with really incredible amounts of people. It's not pure software, right? Like, it's not just pushing code, and it's healthcare in particular, a lot of people involved in those processes, and manufacturing, a lot of businesses that have been around 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years, and just have a lot of people working there, a lot of institutional knowledge. Your point is, starting to retire. And, we see things like the welding shortage, for instance, and some of these really big gaps where, they're so reliant historically on people, less people are maybe going into it. And so that's what's exciting. And it's interesting when companies like yours are, making that part of, your mission, because those are the things that have employed a lot of Ohioans for a really long time.
Yeah, and I think Ohio is especially well positioned to kind of be I'll say the industrial or application layer of kind of the real world application layer of a lot of this. Back to healthcare, manufacturing. I mean, we have such great assets. Right. And that's the hard stuff. And if you see a lot of the funding in the venture world now, right, it's starting to go back to the hard assets, right, and infrastructure, because they saw the SaaS market almost implode because AI is going to, eat up all SaaS, right? So we have the durable competitiveness or capability, right? And if we layer this on top of that, we can really be a powerhouse on, helping more people, and then from a manufacturing perspective, lighting up this the whole industrial kind of manufacturing revolution and onshoring a lot of this stuff. We have, what is it, Ohio? Like, we have third largest kind of manufacturing in the country, and we do everything here, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly spread. Obviously, we've seen this reindustrialization, and to your point, the movement of things, reshoring, and because our state has unfortunately seen what happens when some of these big macro movements, well out of any of our individual control, in what happens, and we are a bit feeling, it's like we're back in the game for the first time in a really long time, and you're seeing manufacturing be rebuilt here. Some of it is that the tech, the manufacturing tech companies, the Andurils, Path Robotics, but to the point work you're doing, there are massive amounts of these mid-sized, privately held, often family-owned businesses that aren't tech first necessarily, but are just traditional manufacturing. And I think that is that key. If we can figure out how to unlock, the power you talk about, the 10x, and helping people kind of really unlock, true gains, productivity. That's something that if we can figure that out, and that it's that application that we're all kind of trying trying to figure out. So it's great you're on the front lines of this trying to do it.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of amazing. I think, we know robotics is coming, right?
Yeah.
It's coming down. It's not quite here yet, right? But there's so much work we need to do. If you just look at like the data footprint of our manufacturers today, it's pretty weak, right? And we need to kind of like back to that data foundation. And
you got to start with the 1 before you go to 2 and 3. Yeah,
exactly. And even on the healthcare side, we know how expensive it is. It's so expensive to kind of, and our population is aging, right? And you can't line it up. So you got to be more efficient and more effective. And there's so much we need to do there. From an operations perspective, we don't really focus too much on the clinical side, but just, go into a doctor's office. There's a lot of operational improvement there, right? And I mean, so I think that's, those are trying to help folks, help more people, and help us reindustrialize this kind of area. So, and, we have a pretty good, like I say, opportunity to do that, and a lot of a great foundation to build on, where a lot of folks just don't have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have the hard parts, right? Like you just don't replicate the healthcare institutions. We have the manufacturing base, and that's all the things that don't just happen overnight. And, the flip of a new LLM and new version of something, and, you can hopefully apply it. But like, we have those hard things, so that's what's should, I think, leave us all hopeful that as we're all figuring this out, that real stuff, we build things, we take care of people when they're sick, and that has a true home in Ohio.
And as we're building these solutions, we're keeping an eye on, you don't want to get open AI'd, right? All of a sudden they upgrade it, and then so I think for folks that are putting these solutions in, know that these models, they're pretty good right now. They're not the technology is not holding any people back. It's this data and that stuff, right? But they're only going to get better, right? They're just getting better, right? So what are we doing, to kind of build the scaffolding so that we can take advantage of that?
Sure.
And I think that's a lot of what we're doing. Like we are, we're very experimental with the models, the different types of them, right? We are not. They change so fast, and you want to be flexible on that so that you're always catching that. But then you want the controls, the testing, it's your processes, and kind of building that, framework and foundation in place, right? And of course, all the people aspects and getting them plugged in and the right incentives for them too, right? So I think that's another thing for folks to keep in mind, that this stuff is only getting better, faster, cheaper. So then how do you kind of ride the wave, not fight it?
Absolutely. Well, Quentin, we could keep going on and on this, but we're going to pivot to our quick hitters, our rapid fire round that we do with all of our guests. And so it's fun to get the perspective of a business owner from Chardon and Northeastern Ohio, and different folks that we're asking all across the state. But the first one is, what is a challenge that you're currently working to solve? So something very specific. It can be big, it can be small, but what's something that you're working to solve at the moment?
Yeah, I think we went back to it. The technology's there, the solution's there. We're just working on how to get some of that adoption, right? The people things. We have patterns for everything else, and it's really about how you engage folks and do a lot of that. It's actually so important that so this whole education and change management is, this past year, we actually became a school, right? So the Aidan Innovation Institute is part of the State Board of Career Colleges and Schools. And the reason is that getting that adoption is so important, that we need to educate people at the top, right? And make sure that they're aware of it and kind of what's going on. But then when you're going through on the project and it's through, and you kind of to make sure that people are, back to the plant analogy, right? People are using this and improving it, right? So people need to be continually, trained to kind of take better advantage of it. So I think that's something that the whole software aspects, we got the whole stack, and we're really working on what the right kind of mechanisms are to kind of take advantage of things like tech cred and all those things to help some of these organizations get started, and then kind of keep the engagement and continuing learning, so these things can get better and better.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, second question: favorite read, listen, or watch? So, a book, a podcast, or a show. What's one that you're enjoying now, or maybe you come back to from time to time?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I was on the All In podcast before it was,
Okay.
all in the very. But I kind of love the kind of broad aspects of the folks that are on. I like to hear them banter, and they're just tech forward, and these guys are investing a lot in it. And it was interesting for me to kind of hear, like I say, more of a balanced view, and then
Sure.
catch up on the latest news from that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Third one is someone's coming to visit, locally in the region for you. Where would you take them for a good meal or a coffee? If you had to kind of show off your area.
Yeah, yeah. We like to take folks to Buckeye Chocolate, right? It's a
Okay.
great place to go for coffee and chocolate. And they have just a really good kind of breakfast. If you want a kind of a real healthy meal, you can have that too. It's just kind of odd at the chocolate shop, but it's a real little gem. And there's a few of them around, right? So
Sure.
so it's a great one here in Chardon. Yeah.
Okay. Final one. How are you spending a perfect Saturday?
Yeah, well, it's NHL hockey season, so playoffs are coming. So hopefully, I'm watching one of those games. I guess that's a key thing. My daughters kind of are growing up, but they kind of got me into running. So I found that kind of Saturday morning is a great way to kind of get out there and do your long run and get the stress from the week out of you, so that you can then kind of really enjoy the weekend. So, and then of course we're seeing spring here, so hanging out with the family outside and trying to just catch some vitamin D, right? Everyone into that, over the past few months.
Yeah, the northeastern Ohio winters are sometimes long and tough. So, when it shifts and you get that proper spring, then summer, you really can't beat it. So,
Yeah.
Quentin, I've really enjoyed the conversation. How can people connect with you, learn more about Aidan? What's the website? We can link your LinkedIn in the show notes, but final thoughts here.
Sure. AidanSystems.com, AidanHealth.com, and that's Aidan with 2 A's. There's no E in there. Remember, Artificial Intelligence Discovery and Action Network, right? So reach out there. I'm on LinkedIn, and Quentin at those addresses as well.
Yeah.
Right. So thanks a lot. Really enjoyed talking to you, Chris, again. And
Absolutely.
the broader team. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, always love chatting with you. Love the mission and passion, especially again with the, I would say 2, but 3. It's healthcare, manufacturing, mid-market. Like that's a big aspect of what Ohio is, what our economy does, and who employs Ohioans. And so, Quentin, love the conversation. Thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for joining. Thanks to everyone for listening and watching. Connect with Quentin, learn more about Aidan, and just really looking forward to the next time we get to chat, Quentin. So thanks so much.
All right.